Freddy Got Fingered was released in 2001 and was directed by and stars Tom Green alongside Rip Torn, Marissa Colin, Eddie K. Thomas, and follows an unemployed cartoonist who moves back in with his parents and younger brother Freddy. When his parents demand he leave, he begins to spread rumors that his father is sexually abusing Freddy. Freddy Got Fingered is one of those infamous bad movies you always hear about. Upon its release, it was destroyed by critics who declared it as one of the worst films ever made, with Roger Ebert going on to say, "This movie doesn't scrape the bottom of the barrel. This movie isn't the bottom of the barrel. This movie isn't below the bottom of the barrel. This movie doesn't deserve to be mentioned in the same sentence with barrels." The day may come when Freddy Got Fingered is seen as a milestone of neo-surrealism. The day may never come when it is seen as funny. The film also received many Razzie nominations, many of which it ended up winning, including Best Picture, but in the years since its release, some have begun to reevaluate it, and it has gained a little bit of a cult following who believe Tom Green is in on the joke and is basically doing what Tom Green does best. I guess I can kind of see where this small fan base is coming from. After all, there's gross out humor that many seem to like, such as the Jackass show and films, which have a dedicated audience, and critics have even quite enjoyed those films. As for Freddy Got Fingered, very few have come around to this film. But where does the difference lie? When does gross out humor become art, and when does it simply remain trash? That's what I really want to talk about with this film. But don't worry, we still will be talking about the movie. But I do want to play a little devil's advocate and look at it from the other side as well, to try to get an understanding as to why it has an audience, because I'm definitely not one of them. So let's waste no time and go into my thoughts on the film. To understand anything about Freddy Got Fingered, it's probably best to look at the creator, Tom Green. Tom Green, who was a pretty big deal in the 1990s and early 2000s with his show, The Tom Green Show, that has jackass-like skits and uses a lot of gross-out humor. Funny enough, the Tom Green Show predates Jackass, but Jackass's similarities to Tom Green are very apparent. That was Tom Green's basic shtick, gross out humor, and while Jackass went on to be very popular and has 4 movies to its name, Tom Green eventually fell from grace and into obscurity when he made his feature film directorial debut, Freddy Got Fingered, which took a lot of his humor and sensibilities and put it on the big screen for all to see. Now, I can already tell your thoughts on this film will completely be dependent on if you're a fan of gross out humor. Typically, I'm not, but I have seen bits of the Jackass show and many clips from the Jackass movies, and I've really enjoyed them, even if gross out humor isn't really my thing. I feel what sets Tom Green and the Jackass team apart, though, is the way in which they implement their humor. Now, to be fair, I have not watched much of anything from the Tom Green show, and to be honest, I'm really not at all that interested, especially after watching this. But Jackass's humor comes from their stunts. These guys do horrible things to themselves for the sake of comedy and entertainment. Most of what they do ultimately comes from pranking each other and others, but they themselves get the blunt end of the abuse. Tom Green, on the other hand, uses gross out humor to get a reaction out of you. Everything he does is in poor taste, on purpose, and in many ways ends up being straight up offensive. There's such a thing as taking a joke too far, and in Freddy Got Fingered, the film has that and more on top of that. Another thing that separates Tom Green and the Jackass crew is simply put, charisma. Johnny Knoxville and Steve-O and the others are just naturally funny and charismatic guys. They feel real and down to earth, like you could be friends with these people. Tom Green feels like an act. Perhaps he is genuine, but he feels like this: if I make myself as annoying as humanly possible, I'll get a laugh out of someone. He lacks the likability of those guys. Now, to be fair, the only bit of Tom Green I have seen comes from this movie and his character. It might not personally be how he is in actuality, but the impression I get when watching Freddy Got Fingered is a man that lacks in personality and makes up for it with being loud and obnoxious. I also want to bring up that I have nothing against Tom Green. His choice and delivery of humor and how it's represented in this film is where my problems lie. Freddy Got Fingered banks itself on its gross-out humor to carry the film, and that's fine. The Jackass films and even their offshoots like Bad Grandpa are very similar in that regard. You will enjoy it if that's the kind of humor you enjoy, and the way it's delivered, it's satisfying enough to laugh at. So, when we get to Freddy Got Fingered, and I'm not laughing a single bit, I think you have failed. Gross out humor can be funny if it's done properly, and I think why much of the gross out humor doesn't work in this film comes down to Tom Green himself. The character of Gord is the most annoying character I have ever seen in a feature film. He is instantly unlikable from the very start, and by the end of the film, he's still unlikable. The humor then becomes, let's do gross out humor while also being as annoying as humanly possible. And so scenes such as the baby birthing scene with Gord swinging around a newborn baby by its umbilical cord falls completely flat because, for one, it's gross, two, it's gross, and three, Gord's absurdness and yelling and everything he is gets in the way of all of it. And that's the majority of the movie. I can't say any of his gross out jokes actually worked in the film. I still find everything to be in poor taste, but the delivery of all of it banks on shock rather than humor, and ultimately it never works in this film. There were sadly moments where the shock did get me. I chuckled, but it was more from the awkwardness of it all, because I instantly felt bad and gross after doing so. Humor can be gross, shock can be funny, but it's completely based on how well it's executed, and never once does it feel like these jokes were designed with any setup or payoff that could be considered funny. There's many moments, too, that lead into the bizarre and strange and the downright dirty. The most disgusted I've ever felt is when the character of Gord says his father molested his younger brother, and Freddy is sent to an institution for children that have also been molested, in which a child tells him it's okay because the same happened to him. And it's done completely straight, as if we're supposed to laugh at it, and it's not funny. Nothing like that is or will be funny. And the fact that that scene even exists is downright icky. If I was to point to moments the film does manage to work through all its horribleness, well, for one, the soundtrack is good. It doesn't add anything to the film, but being a film set fully in the early 2000s, the music is great. But that doesn't make anything in the film any better. I can also say that through it all, Rip Torn was a shining light in the darkness. Through all the terribleness, he was the one I related to the most, annoyed by his son and just wanting him to shut up and get a job. I found a lot of solace in his character because I felt I had been placed in his situation, and that made going through the painful experience a little bit better because I knew Rip Torn's character was no doubt feeling the same. This movie made me feel numb afterwards and maybe a little brain dead. It's a misguided movie that uses shock as a stand-in for comedy, and it completely comes down to that the gross out humor is used for. It's disgusting, disrespectful, racist at times, especially with the women during the birthing scene playing instruments and singing. It feels dirty. And if to enjoy this film you have to be in on the joke and understand Tom Green's sense of humor, then what is on screen needs to actually be funny. I don't really know what else to say about this movie other than this was perhaps the worst film I have ever seen in my entire life. It was painful to watch and even painful writing this review to share with you all because I don't like doing this. I hate being negative. It's not who I am. I don't have it in me to trash a film with such malice. But sometimes we have to do the things we hate the most. After watching the film and keeping it in mind that this movie does have a cult following, I was very interested to see it from that perspective, and after watching it, I'm even more perplexed. Even though understanding the brand of comedy Tom Green specializes in, it ultimately doesn't make a difference. It's still bad in the end, and is one of the worst things I've ever seen. And with all that said, I'm gonna give Freddy Got Fingered a 1 out of 10. This was a horrible experience, and I don't think I will ever understand this film's appeal to a select few. It relishes in its gross-out humor, but does it with little charisma or thought put into the humor. I feel dirty after watching this, and I don't want to go out of a film feeling that way. It's not why I like watching films. Honestly, I feel pretty similar to the boy at the end of this film who runs into a plane's propellers with his blood and gore spraying over everyone, only for him to let everyone know that he's alright. I feel that. I went through the worst of it and came out the other side, and I can say I'm okay. But I'm still going to have the scars from it. I'm sorry this was such a downer, guys. I didn't enjoy doing this, but I thought I could at least add to the conversation. It comes down to the charisma and the performers, and I would even say the subject as well. Freddy Got Fingered is just a mean movie and fails to be called a comedy. But thank you all for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And stay positive.